Hi everyone, and welcome to the talk on Bent TV. I'm Matthew. We're talking about, I guess, issues that affect young LGBTI people, and we're giving people the talk that I guess they wouldn't have gotten when they were younger. You know, a lot of straight people have the talk by their parents where they explain to them about the birds and the bees, but for queer people, that's obviously in a lot of the cases missing. So we're just here to chat about issues affecting young queer people, and today I'm joined by my lovely panelists, Jasmine, Michael, and Chrisi. Hi everyone. Today we thought we'd talk about biphobia in the community because it's quite a prevalent issue, but it's also one that I think is largely invisible because for a lot of people that sexuality just is, you know, often derided or even dismissed. So I think it's quite an important issue. To start off with, though, I was curious to hear from either Chrisi or Jasmine, particularly with queer women, you know, what's bisexuality like in that community? Like, is there a lot of biphobia among queer women in particular, or have you experienced that yourself?
I think as women, if you identify as bisexual, it's seen either that you've had bad experiences with men in the past that have made you, as a result, turn to women, or that you've just yet to find a good man. So you're not really bisexual, you're just out of luck, I guess. That's been my experience anyway.
Has it been similar for you, Jasmine? Or?
In my experience, I have read and met a few lesbians who would rather not date bisexual women. I think because they feel like, oh, I'm just an experiment. They'll just go back to med eventually. And it also conjures up these feelings of competition with men that lesbians would want to avoid.
Oh, in the sense that men would be like, well, if you're bisexual, like, you just, you know, I'm going to get you because, like, I want you to be with a man. Is that what you mean?
More between the woman and the two women.
Oh,
feeling
right.
competition between the bisexual and
because
her
she can't
desire.
compete with the man.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Like there's competition between the lesbian and then men who also like women.
And do you think there's also, like, I guess, an erasure of that sexuality in some cases? Like, do you think there are some queer people who almost think, like, you're not really bisexual, you must just be on the pathway to being a lesbian or even, I mean, straight, but just, you know, that it's almost like a liminal sexuality that a lot of people tend to discredit?
Definitely. I think there's a lot of erasure, and I think a lot of people who have come out as gay, lesbian, etc., have often come out as bisexual first. It's kind of a stepping stone to, I don't know, the next phase, if you will.
Yeah, of course.
So I think a lot of people will look back on their experiences of like, oh yeah, well, I came out as bisexual, you know, but I'm gay or whatever.
And then apply it to like all bi people.
Yeah.
You know, even though it's not the case.
And that's the thing. I know there are plenty of people back in my hometown who, I don't say plenty, maybe like 2 or 3, but that had that similar experience where, you know, they said that they were bisexual and then ultimately ended up coming out as gay. And that was obviously very valid journey or experience for them. But I think when people see that, it's easy to, apply that to across the board and think, oh, that's just what everyone does. You know, they just go through that period. I mean, for gay men, like, I mean, what's your experience been like, Michael?
Well, I did that. I did the whole bi thing for, like, I was never bisexual, but I identified as bi for a couple of weeks and then came out as gay. But it was kind of...
But can I just ask, when you did that, did you know during those weeks that you actually weren't bi? Or did you think you would bi?
Pretty much. Yeah, like I wasn't ready to come out as gay, but I knew that I was definitely attracted to men. And maybe I was questioning women, like praying that I was still attracted to women because I wanted that access to that heterosexual life because, you know, when I knew coming out to my parents, even though my parents weren't religious, they would see me as like, well, you've now lost access to this happy life of marriage and family, marriage to a woman, and, you know, having kids the natural way and all of that. And so I thought if I'm bisexual, I still have my attraction to men, but I also have access to this life. Even though, of course, bisexual people are still, you know, if they're read as heterosexual, that's still a erasure of their identity, but they still have access to it.
But that's what I was going to actually bring up, that kind of interesting dual identity. Like, for people that obviously are legitimately bisexual, there's that that's the kind of like, you're in between in a sense because, well, in more ways than one, but, you know, in the queer community you may feel othered because you're not completely entirely, you know, you may be read as straight in many instances. And with the straight community, you almost have, in some instances, a privilege of passing as straight, so you're not necessarily met with as much overt, you know, homophobia as people in the queer community might be, or there might be people that read as overtly queer. So for people that are bisexual, I mean, how important is it for their visibility, for their identities to be visible and to be acknowledged and accepted, not just by straight people, but actually by people in our community as well? I mean, how important do you think that is?
Well, when I thought I was bisexual for a very long time. I think I identify as bisexual from about the age of, probably not out to anyone else, but to myself, probably from about 15, 14, until like last year.
Oh, recently? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And then I realised, oh, actually, no. But I know that during that whole time, that was a huge part of just not feeling embraced by the queer community, especially because at the time I was dating a cisgendered male, so I was constantly being read as heterosexual, and that was like very upsetting for me.
Can you think of any examples during that time where someone, either in your life or outside of your life, that you told you were bisexual, said something negative or uneducated, or just they dismissed it in some way?
Definitely. Like I remember being told that until you've actually dated women, how you're not, like, are you really a bisexual because you haven't had that experience? So, yeah.
And Michael and Jasmine, I mean, have you even encountered it yourself or even just witnessed it in the community, like with friends or people that you know that are bisexual?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of women are seen as, a lot of bisexual women are just seen as heterosexual because we kind of hypersexualize bisexual women, or like we sexualize, two women like being sexual together as like, for the heterosexual male gaze and all of that. So it's seen as experimenting where like a man like looks at another penis and is gay,
Yeah.
So, and I think it's like really important for bisexual people to like have that representation, and because it's always just seen as like an experiment on television or something. And bisexual people actually there've been a lot of studies that show that they've actually got worse mental illness, greater numbers suffer from depression and suicide attempts than actual like gay and lesbian people.
Well, interestingly, year after year, at Pride March here in Melbourne, when the Bisexual Alliance or March in the March, every year they're met with people that shout out things at them because they just discredit their identities, like specifically that group. I'm sure other groups experience it as well, but interestingly, that group does as well. So as much as it's invisible and dismissed in many cases, people who do acknowledge it a lot of the times have negativity around it because they just obviously think, similar to what you've all been speaking about, it's not legitimate, or, you're not really bisexual, you're clearly just in some, middle phase where you haven't quite moved all the way over to queer. So I think it's really problematic. But I think we're out of time, so thank you so much for joining me again, guys. And thank you for joining us here at the talk on Bent TV.